So good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here. Welcome to Solace's event. It's brilliant that you're all here to join us to hear these fantastic sisters, activists, feminists who will be talking this evening about solidarity and what it means to be an activist and why we need solidarity more than ever. Given what's going on everywhere, including here in this country. So as we know, tonight is the eve of the UN's 16 days of activism to end gender-based violence. And this year, the UN is specifically focusing on the COVID-19 pandemic, but they're also looking at the shadow pandemic, as they're calling it, which is the huge increase in violence against women and girls, and also the mainstreaming of misogyny in our political systems and in our societies. Sadly, we know too well as feminists and as women working in the sector what impact this is having on women's lives. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce you to our panel, and then we're going to get into energizing an honest discussion about where we currently are and where we need to get to. So first of all, I want to introduce you to our CEO, Fiona Dwyer, who is the CEO of Solace Women's Aid. And then I'm going to introduce you to Mona Eltahawy, who, as many of you know, is an award-winning columnist and an international public speaker, an author and a kick-ass feminist. So it's great to have you here, Mona, from Montreal, where you are today. Is it this morning? What time are you on at the moment?
Middle of the day.
Middle of the day, that's good. I don't feel so bad about getting you here then. And then I'd like to introduce you to Jenn Selby, who's a freelance journalist, a writer and editor, and Jenn has written for a number of publications and broadcasts on the BBC as well. Also really delighted to have Ngozi Fulani, who's the founder of Sistah Space, an organisation which Solace works very closely with, and we have huge amounts of respect for what you do and what the sisters do in your organisation. We know it's been a challenging time for you, and we know you're going to hopefully talk a bit about that as well. So thank you for being here. And last but not least, we have Huda Jawad, who's the founder of Safety Across Faith and Ethnic Communities. Huda is a feminist who doesn't really need much of an introduction, but does really groundbreaking and important work in relation to faith and Black and minoritized communities and the needs the community of women have around domestic abuse and gender-based violence. We also have a hashtag, which is hashtag Solace16days. And before we start this conversation, I'm going to say something that's fairly obvious, but I think in life, especially these days, very little is obvious. So I'm just going to say it, okay? So this is a safe space. This is a space where we are here to actively listen to each other. We are here to engage with each other in a respectful way. This is a space which we want to make sure is free of all forms of bigotry. This is an anti-racist space. This is a space for intersectional feminists. This is a space for all women. And I'm going to say very clearly, including our trans sisters as well. So we know that we are living in unprecedented times. I think that word is overused, as we all know, but this year is continuing to be a very relentless and exhausting year for many of us. The COVID-19 pandemic has made a lot of women's lives much more difficult, more challenging, and as a frontline and Ending Violence Against Women and Girls organisation, Solace is seeing this day to day in our work here in London and the UK, and we know that women and feminists across the world are seeing the same. This is also a year where we are seeing the mass mobilisation of activists and protesters and feminists in ways we have not seen before. This is the year that has reinvigorated the Black Lives Matter movement. It's the year that has reinvigorated mass mobilization of feminists. Right now, we know that our sisters in Poland are taking to the streets. Women around the world are standing up for their rights again in very, very difficult circumstances. So there's a lot of hope, and activism has definitely been reinvigorated. So I think that's quite an exciting we're in an exciting place, and I think it's important to remember that as well. Amongst all the gloom and the doom and the horror, there is a lot of hope as well. So without further ado, I'm going to ask Mona to open our panel. So Mona, without further ado, I'm going to hand the microphone over to you.
Thank you so much, Sistah. Hello, everyone. My name is Mona Eltahawy. My pronouns are she, her, hers. And I begin everything always with my declaration of faith, which is fuck the patriarchy. I am honored and thrilled to be part of this panel today because these are, as you said, Sistah, unprecedented times, but today is also a very difficult and important day for me personally, because today, exactly 9 years ago, Egyptian riot police assaulted me. They broke my left arm and my right hand, and they sexually assaulted me, and I was threatened with gang rape. And I was detained incommunicado by the Interior Ministry and then by military intelligence. Very close, I was taken very close from Tahrir Square, and I was taken after the Interior Ministry to military intelligence, where I was blindfolded and interrogated. And I didn't receive any medical aid or help during the time of my detention. And finally, I was released. And the reason that I'm here today, and it's so important for me to be part of this discussion on this anniversary, is that I know that if I were an unknown, anonymous, working class woman who didn't have any of the advantages that I have, my name, my fame, my platform, all of that, I would have been gang raped. And I probably would have been detained for years, if not killed. So because of all the privileges that I have, and especially because today is the anniversary of this very difficult day for me, and Egypt is coming up to the 10th anniversary of our revolution in January. Tunisia is coming up to its 10th anniversary of its revolution in December. It's a time to recognize both privilege and pain, to recognize softness and rage, to recognize our resilience and our survival, and to say fuck the patriarchy openly and clearly, and to recognize that long before this pandemic began, we were surviving and we were being assaulted. And these 16 days, as important as they are, we must be paying attention to violence against women, cisgender women, transgender women, the non-binary community, femmes all over the world, queer people, because the patriarchy is not invested in our survival. So this is a day, and this is a time to remember all of this, because the pandemic has exacerbated it and made it so much worse for women and girls and queer people across the world. And depending on where you are in the world, it's especially bad. So in the United States, where I've lived for the past 20 years, the pandemic has disproportionately affected Black women, Indigenous women, women of color, disabled women, women who are usually marginalized and ignored. And so it is, let's take this opportunity to recognize the privileges that we have and to use those privileges to elevate and to amplify those who have deliberately been put into the shadows. This idea of a shadow pandemic, I mean, it's a real shame for us all over the world that this was ever in the shadows. We know what we are subjected to all across the world. We know what we have to survive. And yet it takes a pandemic where under lockdown, women and queer people across the world are facing intimate partner terrorism, violence from parents, violence from homophobic family members. We've known all along that this is happening. We've known all along that patriarchy isn't just about misogyny, which is why I'm delighted and thrilled to be among such a diverse panel, because patriarchy is also about capitalism, ableism, homophobia, transphobia, white supremacy. So we know all the people that have been pushed into the shadows. And if we are going to emerge, if we're going to survive from this pandemic, we must ensure that no one is ever pushed into the shadows again. We cannot come out of this pandemic as if we're going back to normal. There is no going back to normal. So one of the things that I'm doing as a way of making sure, ensuring that there is no going back to normal, because that normal, quote unquote, is one of the reasons that we are here in this pandemic, because that normal pushed so many people into the shadows. One of the things that I've done on a very personal level is to shave off all my hair, because I don't want to just appear after this pandemic as if it's, you know, oh yeah, I'm going back to everything that I used to do before. I want to emerge from this scathed, not unscathed, scathed, because the immensity of this moment is going to take us a long time to really appreciate. And on a more public level, what I'm trying to do to ensure that no one is cast into the shadows is that I've completely turned upside down the way I work. I've launched a newsletter called Feminist Giant. And what I'm doing with this newsletter is ensuring that all of those people that were put in the shadows are centered. So this is a newsletter that centers women, femmes, and queer people across the world. It decenters whiteness, it decenters the so-called West. And helping me to do that in this newsletter are 5 interns, 4 of whom are women of color, 1 of whom is non-binary. And together we work on this newsletter. So the interns produce the global roundup, which Monday to Friday compiles articles from around the world of global feminist resistance to patriarchal fuckery, because we are resisting. As Sistah said, women are resisting in Poland. They're also resisting in Thailand. They're resisting in almost every country across the continent of Africa, where I come from. They're resisting across Latin America. We are resisting everywhere. And through Feminist Giant, which is free, because I don't want to add an extra burden during this difficult time, I want to share the news of global feminist resistance as a way to amplify and as a way to show love and solidarity. So that's my contribution to this time. I'm sure that we will discuss more about what we're all doing. I want to pass the mic on to my fellow sisters and comrades here, but I want you all to understand and to appreciate the immensity of this moment, and that through our love and solidarity for each other, we will emerge from this scathed, but we will ensure that no one is cast into the shadows again.
Well, thank you, Mona. Thank you for everything you do, for everything you stand for. And the thing I respect everything about you, but the thing I really respect about you is that you have love and compassion, deep love and compassion for yourself and for everyone. And you are always the first to show solidarity, and that's basically how we got to know each other, and I'm very honoured to have you in my life. I just want to share something very quickly, because we know that the local, the national and the international is connected, and we're going to talk about that a little bit this evening as well. As we know, in the UK, during the first lockdown, the National Domestic Abuse Helpline received 40,000 calls during the first lockdown. And I messaged Mona because I was out and about in Oxford, and I came across a young woman, a young Black Muslim woman, and she looked really uncomfortable, and I could sense something was not right with her. And she was reading a book. Mona, she's reading one of your books, as you know. And so I made an excuse to go up to her and check on her. And we started talking about Mona's book. And we had a little conversation. And then the conversation developed a little bit more. And then she asked me for my phone number. So I gave it to her because I understood that something was going on with this young woman. Fast forward into the lockdown, we exchanged a few messages. And it transpired that she was having a lot of issues at home. She was not safe there. And so we agreed on a safe word, and the safe word was Mona. And one particular evening, I received this message out of nowhere saying Mona, and we'd agreed that if she would send this to me, that would mean that I need to contact the police. And so I did. And so the police removed her immediately from where she was and took her to a place of safety. And I messaged Mona to tell you this, because I was so deeply moved by that. And that really does tell you everything about why we need to see and hear all of us, because we all give each other courage and hope, and we all amplify each other, and we all, you know, for that young woman to be reading that book, if she wasn't reading that book, I don't think I would have been able to have that conversation with her. So it was like, you know, all the connections, everything coming together. So thank you, Mona, and thank you for everything you do. Ngozi, we're going to go over to you now, and so the microphone is with you.
All right, well, thanks, Solace, for inviting Sistah Space to speak. We have enough to say. Thank you, Mona, for your brilliance, you know. Now, I'm going to ask if you can see me, if everybody can see me. And if you can, just say yes. And I'll tell you why, because it seems like as a Black woman, we're hardly, it's like people don't see us. They certainly can't hear us. So I'm going to go in between the English, the African and the Caribbean dialects, yeah? Because you're not going to see me and you're not going to hear me today. You see? Right. So I am from Sistah Space, and Sistah Space is possibly the only specialist organization of its kind, a charity that supports African and Caribbean heritage women and girls affected by domestic and sexual abuse. And when I say that, it's because it's very rare for me to sit on a panel where I can see myself reflected. Yes, I mean, my hair is locks, it's different. You know, my skin is, I'm usually the darkest person there, the one who's dressed strangely. You know, people are saying to me, I like your costume. This is not a costume. This is my, you know, this is my wardrobe. It's not a costume, you know? So Sistah Space was founded after the death of Valerie Ford and her 23-month-old baby girl. Now, Valerie had gone to the police and reported a threat to burn down the house with her and her children in it. And the police put it down as a threat to property. Subsequently, he came in and he murdered her. Screwdriver, hammer, and a machete. And then he turned it on his own 23-month-old baby. All right. Now, you won't often hear our story because it seems that we're not newsworthy. And the UK Black story is very different than everybody else's. Nobody can't tell our story. Ours is very different. And enough love to our family in America. Right now, you know that I'm feeling America, you know, since the George Floyd murder and the subsequent, and murders before and murders after. I'm telling you, I never feel so close to my family in America and other places. You can see what's happening. But first of all, and you need to put your hand up, you know, because when I start talking, I don't know when to stop, you see? So if I go over, just stop me, yeah? First of all, the labels that we are given don't work for us. BAME or whatever. Now, in parts of Jamaica, BAME is bammy, that's bread. I don't describe myself as a feminist. Too many names and labels. I'm older, you know, I'm from the Windrush generation. This naming thing don't really work for me. It just confuses the issue, yeah? So I just want to tell you that today I don't come to play. I don't come to be nice. Solace, you have done what others have not, yeah? You have heard us as when we've said to you, you know, we find the violence against women and girls sector, the VWAG sector, very discriminatory, yes? But if you look on their website, you're not going to, you could have scrolled down for 2 days, you're not going to see me, you see? This is a problem, all right? You're not going to hear my mouth. Oftentimes, other people are speaking for us. So they will kindly say, well, we're going to speak at the assembly hall, we're going to speak this place or that. What can we bring for you? So what? I don't have my own mouth. I can speak for myself. Nobody cannot tell my story. My story is different than everybody else's here in the UK. As it is on the 2nd of December, they are quietly putting together to ship more people out. I don't know if you know that, all right? Last year, my brother-in-law was one of the people that were deported. Left my sister and her 2 children without a father. He'd been here for 20 years, yes? And then what do? They demonize us so that everything is okay, yeah? So that people feel, oh, you know, you got rid of bad rubbish. No. I want to tell you as well, right, the difficulty we have as a domestic abuse charity. What do we do? How do we advise our clients to go to a system that can't see us, can't hear us, don't like us, yes? Now, I'm going to tell you that I operate in Hackney. And most of you will be aware that we've had this ongoing problem with Hackney Council, who seem to think that we should be in a building that is not fit for purpose, or, you know, I don't know what they think, I am not them. But I know that they went through hell to get us out of this place we were in. And then we came in one day, and the sister that I work with, Rosanna Lewis, she's amazing. Now there's one paid worker that the London Mayor's office pays for the whole of London. One. We're supposed to support the whole of London. So we've got 9 volunteers, and we take that one pay and we divide it between 9 people so that we can eat and travel. This is the system that we're working in. How am I supposed to tell clients they should feel comfortable to go to the police? How am I supposed to tell clients to feel comfortable to go to their local council? The local council evicted us unlawfully. We found out from the media, and then they put it on their social media. They sent 7 security men to come, a couple of women, 7 security people to come and force us out the building. The Hackney Council turned into our perpetrators. We had 21,000 people plus sign this petition. Hackney said they're not discussing it. They decided they, if it wasn't one thing or something else. So we're still not getting justice now. Tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock, our new petition will come out. Because on the 17th of January, we will be without a base. We are the only organization, as I said, that can support African and Caribbean heritage women and girls the way we know that they need to be supported here in this UK with our story. So 17th of January, and they said that they're not obliged to help us. All right, so how am I doing for time? Because when I'm ready, you know, you see, right? So high risk, yes, Black, and I think it's other, they call them, I don't like this ethnic minority, I don't like the names, but we are at a higher risk of COVID. That is the time Hackney Council decided to evict us. Right now, as we're in the second lockdown, the focus is taken away from what we need to do because we know that in a few weeks' time, we won't have nowhere to go. All right, so how are we supposed to tell the grassroots community? And I noticed that I never yet see a Rastafarian woman being represented by anybody. It's like they don't exist. I'm telling you, we exist. Yes. So we are living and existing in a very, very unfair government, in a situation. We are blessed that the people that, I don't know if people follow us on Twitter or Instagram or whatever it's called, and it's the community, you know, the community come behind us and they fought with us. They fought with us. There's the Women's Equality Party, the Green Party, and the Liberal Democrats. They came together. Yeah, the Jewish community wrote a letter telling off Hackney Council. So the only way we're going to survive anything like this is if we stick together. Yes. Stop calling us names like Afro-Caribbean. I don't have an Afro. Afro is a hairstyle. Yes. Invite us into the conversation. We're very good at speaking for ourselves. All right. Let me stay there for now. I have plenty, but let me leave it there for now.
Thank you so much. And thank you for bringing the truth and the fire and the rage to this space, and also for naming the oppressions, naming the systems that are working against
perpetrators.
Perpetrators, yes, and also for calling out the Vogue sector as well, which needs a shake, as we all know. So thank you. Solace is proud to support Sistah Space. Fiona's nodding enthusiastically there. We'll go to Fiona in a moment. So we're very proud to be supporting and standing alongside you, because that is, quite frankly, the only thing we should be doing. And we are here to amplify your work, as you know, and the work of the sisters, and that's something we're not going to stop doing. Somebody's shared the GoFundMe page for Sistah Space. There's a lot of activity going on here.
Wow.
on the sidebar, lots of brilliant things, and everybody here wants you to know that we see you and we hear you, and you are not invisible at all. So thank you for being here. So Fiona, I'm going to hand the microphone over to you now.
Thanks, Shaista. Yeah, I always feel a bit intimidated when I sit on panels like this, especially with such amazing women from all over the world. Just thank you for all for being here, and thank you to all of our participants as well. It's fantastic that so many of you have made the what I think is quite a difficult choice, because there's always such amazing events on this time of year, but we did cleverly do it for the 24th, as been mentioned. But I know looking at the alternative lineup as well, thank you all for coming. Yeah, I just wanted to highlight really, you know, a lot of what's been happening. You know, we've heard about the challenges that Sistah Space has had, fighting a pandemic, fighting the patriarchy, and fighting against Hackney Council at the same time, unnecessarily in my view. And as you know, we have been supporting you, which whatever we can do. We have said, let us know. At Solace, obviously, we are a large frontline delivery organisation, so COVID-19 necessarily had a massive impact on not only how we deliver services, and we had to adapt our model very quickly, but also I think many of you who are here will have heard me say already, just the impact on our staff well-being. You know, we are a London-based organisation, and let's face it, we know that many of our staff members are living in you know, flats with no gardens, quite often, as is the case in London, you know, renting where the lounge is also a bedroom, or, you know, I've seen some things over the years where literally some bedrooms are sheds within lounges within flats. And so we know that many of our staff have been sitting sort of cross-legged on the bed with a laptop, and that's been an incredible challenge, because what it means is at the same time you're, you know, whereas it's bringing the trauma of women who we're supporting. So we've continued to support women throughout COVID-19, but also it's bringing that trauma, and it's bringing the trauma into your own homes, and where there's no kind of escape from it. And we've seen the massive impact that that's had on our staff well-being. So we, you know, in the light of COVID, and then in the light of Black Lives Matters, it's been a massive impact on the staff team. And I think, you know, that's been a real challenge for us at Solace, is how do we support, what more can we do? And, you know, we've implemented lots of different, you know, wellbeing budgets and extra clinical supervision, but what's enough? Because I don't think anything is enough at the time when, you know, women's mental health in general is declining, and even without COVID, we've seen disproportionate impacts on women of you know, austerity policies. And as I said, the staff who aren't living in one room may have caring responsibilities, maybe parents, and had to parent during lockdown. You know, and at the same time, you know, in my view, the government hasn't stepped up as much as it could have done to support, in particular, domestic abuse charities, especially when, you know, the cases that we are seeing coming to Solace have been ever more complex. And at the same time, you know, we've got a government who's decided that suddenly violence against women and girls and domestic violence are two completely separate things and need separate strategies and separate approaches. So, you know, at this challenging time, when we all know that all of these strands of violence against women and girls are interlinked, you know, you can't separate out one from another. Some people on this will have heard me say, oh, sorry, that's my dog. He's been so quiet all day. You know, will have heard me say about the Fisher Price nature of the surveys that have been sent out, because they are, you know, some of the questions are a nonsense in it. And, you know, as an organisation at Solace, you know, we're not adverse to activism. We have, you know, over the years, we have done, oh, good, I'm glad, Jen, thanks, that your dog might make noise as well. You know, we work at the heart of communities that we work with, you know, right across London, and we want to hear those voices coming through. We, you know, as an organisation and as a larger service delivery organisation, I think we do have a responsibility to support not just the women in our communities, but also other organisations across London. And that, you know, I think what has come out of this, which is fantastic, is that we all need to work together more. And I think, Ngozi, you put it really well, saying sort of, who are the voices at the table and who has been the most vocal, and why are you not invited to the conversations? And you know, there are select people who are invited to those conversations, and it's like, how do we drive it forward so that it is more about sisterhood and it is more about us all working together regardless of what we do. I'm going to make more time for others to speak, so I'm going to stop talking now. Just a quick overview, but yeah, just thanks everyone for coming to the panel today. And I think it's really important that we have more spaces like this to have these conversations and bring women together. So it's that sort of women supporting women instead of pulling other women down, as we have seen, particularly in our government, for example. So yeah, so it's just about how do we be a more of a collective voice.
Thank you very much, Fiona, and thank you for speaking really clearly about the challenges that our colleagues who are doing the frontline work have been facing for the last you know, we're coming up to, I think, 7-8 months of this pandemic. So the fact that we know the power of women, we know that. We all understand it, but the fact that we have our sisters, you know, some of them, you know, in cramped spaces, in bed sits. I remember Fiona and I had a conversation quite early on, and I remember feeling very moved when you were telling me about some of the situations. So, you know, women in bed sits with a laptop on their lap for like 10-12 hours a day, keeping our services running, making sure that women are kept alive and they're safe and they're well. And these women are also trapped in a different way to you know, victims and survivors, but they can't leave their place where they're living because of the pandemic, but they've kept going, and it's been deeply humbling to see. And you know, we know the power of women when we work together, but it has been very moving. So thank you, Fiona, for honouring those sisters that we work with, and the organisations that we work alongside as well. So Jenn, I'm going to hand the mic over to you next.
Okay, thank you so much. My name's Jenn Selby. I'm a journalist, editor and a campaigner. And I'm also a former service user from Solace, who counselled me and advocated for me at one of the most difficult periods in my life, and without which I'm not sure quite how I would have handled it. I want to talk about activism today as a form of justice for survivors like me, who did not receive justice and adequate closure through the criminal justice system. And probably never will, and we know now that that's the story for almost everyone that tries to have a man convicted for something like rape, with our conviction rate as low as it is, just 1.7%. It's effectively been decriminalised in England and Wales. So that we're running out of options basically for how to seek that. But one way that I've managed to do it is through activism. So I want to just put a trigger warning now, because I am going to talk a little bit about my personal experience, and I just, if this is going to affect you in any way at all, just put it on mute, go and make a cup of tea, and just take care of yourselves. I'm going to start now. I was attacked in my sleep by a man that I knew quite well. It took a year for charging, and another year for the case to go to court. So that's 2 years of my life suspended, completely uncertain. This sort of feeling that I had to be very careful about what I put out in public too, because I knew that I was being watched by his defence team. So that was, you know, not posting photos of me that looked where I was too happy, like getting completely, you know, if I was at an event or something like that, just not being involved in that, so I didn't look like I had my life too together. It was really important to sort of to do that, despite it being such a long time. So I buried myself in my work, and of course, like so many survivors, I suffered from depression, from anxiety, from PTSD. A few days before I was actually set to take to the stand, I had a visit from the police. They told me there was no longer going to be a trial. His defence team had repeatedly tried to claim that he had a disorder called sexomnia, which doesn't actually exist. But it means basically what they were claiming is that it was a psychological problem where he raped people in his sleep, and he was unaware that he was doing it. While this had been disproven in a sleep clinic and by the psychologists already, the CPS felt that the whole situation would confuse the jury too much, so they dropped it, they threw it out. At the time, I was completely crushed. I felt ashamed, I felt invalid, I felt unimportant, I felt like no one cared, and I didn't get the chance to be listened to be heard, and to have my suffering acknowledged, as the justice system should do for everyone. It's the closure we need to move on from tragedies in our life, and it is the burial from which mourning can start, and we can begin to bring a new strength to the surface and move forward. So without that, I had anger and confusion, still had PTSD, and no idea what to do with it all. So thank God I was able to channel how I was feeling and into something that would give back rather than to sink me. You know, it's been a long, hard 5 years since then of being involved in various campaigns and working with some incredible teams, which I've been lucky enough to do. I've manned international press programmes to support women's rights charities in India with a Her Voice was the name of the campaign there. we got the public on side with as a press lead for IC Change UK, which is the award-winning team who passed a law to timetable the government to ratify the Istanbul Convention. And it led to the domestic abuse bill that is set to be passed into law in the coming months. As ever, it's been pushed back about 1 million times. I really hope the government gets a wiggle on with that one, because we were a bit tired of waiting. Last year, I stood in the general election for the Women's Equality Party, which isn't something I ever thought would happen in my life, but I did. I was a part of a team of 5 survivors, each one of them with very different stories, really incredible women. And we stood against men in government who had unanswered accusations of assault and harassment against women against them. But they were still allowed to run for government. It's our belief, particularly during the Me Too Westminster scandal that saw not a single MP lose their jobs, that we couldn't hope to influence the behaviour of the wider public or strengthen our equality laws to make gender-based violence a thing of the past if those in power were able to act with this seeming impunity. And we wanted to change it, and we did. Not a single man we stood against returned to their office. The MP that I was against, Mark Field, who was the MP in City of London and Westminster, announced he was standing down after 20 years. But he's the guy that grabbed a peaceful protester by the neck, held her up against the wall, and then dragged her out at a dinner event. 20 years he stood down. I remember when I found out, I cried. Like, the feeling was overwhelming. That was justice. It was not just for the woman he attacked. It certainly wasn't sort of, you know, it didn't change anything that I'd been through, but there was a real feeling, not just for me but for other survivors, that something had happened here, something at the very top we were able to change together. All of us survivors, all of us been denied justice, and we were able to find a different justice for that way. We also managed to secure a deal with the Liberal Democrats. Sadly, we all know what happened to them in the election. So we're hoping that when they get a bit stronger, we can tap them for that. But it was about the Recall Act to allow constituents to sack their MPs if they are found to be guilty by an independent panel of harassment or violence against women. They also agreed to our motions on ring-fence funding for domestic abuse services and refuges, which is remains one of our key policies to this day. Another of the men we stood against was Charlie Elphick, who is now in prison for rape. So thank God he didn't get in the House of Commons in the end. These successes are incredible. The benefits of activism as a form of justice don't stop there. Through this, not only did I find a voice and learn new skills, but I found a loving and supportive and intersectional community to do it with, who, we bring each other up. Lots of us have been through very similar experiences. But we're able to sort of use those to propel ourselves. It's not easy. It's not without sacrifice doing this, and it certainly is triggering as hell. It really is, and it can be really hard, and you have to take care where you go. But I think it's worth it, and it does provide you with some closure. It's not a sticking plaster. It doesn't work for everyone, but it's what Michelle Obama says: when they go low, we go high, and that's one way of going high against these men. Make sure they see you everywhere, see your face, getting involved, and doing what you can to make the situation better for other people. So just wanted to very quickly wrap up by talking about what we're doing next as well. I'm standing with the Women's Equality Party in the Greater London elections, where we aim to get at least 1 member onto the Assembly, hopefully 2, hopefully get Mandy Reid, who is fantastic, first Black leader of any political party in the UK, as the mayor. But we want to hold whoever is the mayor to account for issues with a gender perspective, which currently isn't being done and doesn't exist there. London does face some problems at the moment. 2,000 women and children were turned away from refuges this year. We know that domestic abuse offences have risen by about 63%, but refuges in some London boroughs have had their funding slashed by 75%. We also know that all 4 rape crisis centres were forced to close their waiting lists this year in London because they couldn't keep up with the sheer demand for people wanting it. So we really need a seat at that table to ensure that we get that ring-fenced funding, sustainable funding on a grant basis for services, including specialist services like Sistah Space, to make sure that we are supporting everyone, that we're not treating women and the problems women face as a homogenous community either. We're different, we have different needs, different wants, and we should be catering to women on that basis. We also want other things, other great things like free childcare, and to put well-being first in the way that we make economic decisions. We're really excited about this, as you can tell. We can just see how amazing London could be. We want it to be one of the best places for women to be on earth, and we really think it can be. You get 3 votes during this election. We hope it's back in time this year, COVID depending, in May. We really hope that you give us one of yours. In the meantime, please do follow us. Please do get involved and support us. We'd really love for you to be part of what we do. Thank you.
Thank you, Jen. And it goes without saying that we're very deeply sorry to hear about what happened to you, and also Mona, you as well. And there are people here listening to the conversation who've experienced something similar, or who have loved ones or friends or people in their lives who've also gone through something similar. So we understand that, and we know that, like you said, some aspects of this conversation are very difficult for that reason. So in the sidebar, we've put the number in for the Solace helpline. If anybody feels like they would need to, speak to someone confidentially, please know you can do that. The number is there for you. And yeah, so thank you so much. And thanks for all the incredibly powerful activism that you're bringing to the table, and the voices that you're amplifying as well. So thank you. Huda, I'm going to hand the microphone over to you.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for staying and listening. I just want to say a couple of thank yous. I want to say thank you to Jenny and Mona and Ngozi for sharing something so powerful and painful and turning it into something so inspiring. And I think that takes real courage and resilience and a kind of strength that only women like you can embody and nurture. So, it is really something that you do it with such joy and grace, and you do it with such passion, and I find that deeply humbling and also deeply inspiring. So thank you for letting us in and sharing with us your pain, but also how you transform it to light. I also want to thank Sistah and Fiona and Solace for making and creating this safe space. I cannot tell you how much it's needed. We, as workers and activists and women on the front line, and have been utterly exhausted by the impact of COVID.
We seem to have some connection problems with you, Huda. Are you still there?
You have done, see me?
Yeah, your screen, you keep dropping out. Your audio keeps dropping out, but carry on.
Okay, I'm gonna try and see if what's happened to my internet connection. Sorry about that. I guess if you can still hear me.
We can, carry on.
What I want to say is that one of the impact of the pandemic has been the depletion of women dealing with patriarchy and white supremacy to the point of exhaustion. I think we in the women's movement are so aware of our responsibility towards those who need help and support that very often we're quite bad at supporting ourselves and taking care of ourselves. And we sacrifice our own well-being and health so that we can be there for others. But I think it's so important that we have spaces like this where we can come replenish and get some kind of solidarity, some kind of re-energizing space, because when we are exhausted and when we are tired, that's when we don't hold the line and patriarchy can slip in and white supremacy can slip in. So this is absolutely vital that we continue to take a breath and we review what's happening. And this is what I want to do for the next 5 minutes, is to just kind of have a summary perhaps, or a reflection as to what's happened so far in our lives and globally, and how white supremacy is reacting to that, and why we now more than ever must hold the line and not, absolutely not waver from our kind of support for each other, but also our visibility and taking up space as intersectional feminists who stand in solidarity and act in solidarity with each other, but also are putting our heads above the parapet and making very clear what our values are, because this is the time to do it, and like no other. I think what's clear is that the pandemic has created a disruption of capitalist patriarchy. It has disrupted white man's control over global institutions, over the world order, over the micro and the macro. It has also led to an awakening, a consciousness raising, or a reinvigoration of that for many grassroots, ordinary people, but also people who are cogs in this system, who are finally feeling what is all this about, and why are we here, and how did we get to here? And actually, within the space of, you know, a week, the whole world can turn upside down, and the what is normal is, as Mona said, no longer okay, and it never was okay. But now that actually it can be disrupted, so there's nothing that is inevitable about the way we live today and the structures that exist today. And I think that's what has that made people aware that actually we can change our circumstances. And the murder of George Floyd has really highlighted how the toxic mix of misogyny, patriarchy, racism, and structural oppression has really meant that people are really quite fed up to the back teeth of continuous injustice with no accountability, injustice with impunity, and that somehow everything goes if you are a particular type of man. And I think what is clear is George and Fiona and all the women and men who have come before them and will come after them have acted as a catalyst, where this is a particular moment in time that we've decided to capitalize on. And I'm so glad that we in the women's movement are supporting and looking for allies in the work that we do, because as all of you have said, we cannot do this alone, we need to do it together. Therefore, the reaction of white supremacist patriarchy that is housed in this capitalist order must be expected to be quite vociferous, clever, and long-lasting. So you will have very open and hostile responses, but also you have very subtle ones. So we need to be careful that our movement does not get co-opted by racists, that it does not become professionalized by corporations, that we don't end up being the return on social investment charity of the year for a whatever accountancy firm that's contributed to this disaster, and that we are able to not be beaten by the carrot of proximity to power and governance. And I think that's really important, because as has been pointed out by Fiona and others, the delineation of the Vogue strategy from the domestic abuse strategy, the rolling back of rights, suddenly Black and brown bodies are being presented as the leaders of a new so-called revisionist agenda around, actually we don't need, Black people are not oppressed, we're not victims, and women don't need the Me Too movement, because that's also a very victim-like narrative. And so this is very calculated strategies that Cummings and others have been involved in contributing to. And we need to be very aware. Now is the time to be politically literate women. You know, we read up, educate ourselves. We need to ensure that we know the tools that patriarchy will use to silence us or to water down our impact, because they are frightened, and that's why they're doing this, and they're realizing that we are coming into our power. So all I ask for from us all as a collective is, when you are invited to the most powerful tables, say, well, is Ngozi there? Has she been invited? And if she hasn't, ask why. And maybe give up your space and give her your space. If you are being asked about applying for a fund to help with COVID, say, no thanks. Maybe I'll support a Black and minoritized organization to, I'll lend them my funder for 2 or 3 days or a week. And one of the things that the Black Lives Matter movement has impacted us in the UK and the women's sector is the creation of the anti-racism charter that women from the sector have come together to put to the sector, which will be launched on the 10th of December. So I invite everyone here to look out for it, in conjunction with all the partners here, all the activists that we have worked with all the workers who have been working on the front line before COVID and since COVID. And thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to feel the sisterly love and solidarity, and I am here for you. I stand with you, and whatever I can do to be of service to my fellow women, I am here for. So please, you know, count me as part of your army. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Huda, and thank you to each of you for everything that you do, for being who you are, and for coming into this space and being so unequivocally clear about, you know, what we need to be clear about, which is this: what is going on cannot continue, and we have to be firmer in our convictions, and we have to find ways to actually work together and to amplify each other's voices, and to do what Huda just said, which is to understand when we all need to get out of the way for other so-called others. There's no other here. We've got lots of questions and comments, and there's been an incredible response to everything each of you have said. Lots of people here are very moved, saying that this is the first time they've heard this type of discussion take place in the way that it's taking place this evening. People are talking about the depth and the breadth of what you've said, and the honesty in the room, and the ability to name the oppressions that are ongoing. And also people are thanking you for sharing your stories, sharing your experiences and your lived realities, which are not easy. There's a lot of love here. I keep seeing this word love coming up, which I'm all about love. So very pleased to see that. There's been quite a few questions, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to wrap some of these questions up together, because we've got 7 minutes or something like that before we come to the end of this conversation. We purposely kept this for an hour because of everything everybody here has said. This is a time of a lot of anxiety and exhaustion as well, and this conversation has been incredible and uplifting and powerful, but it's also, I think, a conversation that requires processing as well. So we do want to try and stick to time. Okay, so I'm going to read out a couple of questions and statements, which are what I would like you all to do is kind of be able to respond in the impossible, which is 2 minutes, and just to give us a wrap up. So one of the themes that's come up this evening is the theme around firefighting. So as intersectional feminists, currently on the front line in relation to everything we've discussed about this evening, how do we move from firefighting mode into being able to tackle the bigger issues? And also, how is it possible to take a step back and to really understand what we need to do? People are also asking, how do we work more cohesively in solidarity with each other? There's a question here about online violence and ending Vogue. We know that this online sphere is more and more important than ever before. It's giving huge and rightly so visibility to oppressed people and minorities around the world in ways we've not seen. Obviously, we know that there's a positive to it, and there's also a deep violence in that space as well. And then, yeah, people are just generally asking about how we build solidarity. And I like the fact that that's coming up a lot. And before we go to each of you, I also just want to pick up on some of the themes that have come up from each of you. So we've heard from sisters this evening who say, you know, you've been invisibilized because of your race, because of who you are. We've heard about how, you know, those of you who have experienced violence, sexual violence, who've chosen to share that with us this evening. You talked, Jen, for example, about shame. Mona, I know you are really passionately about many things, but shame, as a Muslim woman in particular, you've really gone out of your way to deconstruct what that means. The domestic abuse bill has come up a few times as well. And we've also talked about those women and our sisters who continuously are excluded from spaces. So yeah, so there's some of the themes that have come up from this evening. So Mona, do you want to go first? Should we come to you first on that?
Actually, could you go to someone else, Shaista? Because
Yes.
I just got to answer the door because I'm at home. I'll be right back.
That's fine, no problem. Okay, Ngozi, how about we come to you first? Would you like to give us a wrap up in terms of sort of opinions of the final elements of this panel?
Thank you so much.
She's coming back. Okay, over to you, Ngozi. Did you have to unmute yourself?
Good idea. When you talk about firefighting, it's important to remember language in this whole VOAG thing it doesn't work for us. Because when you're talking about firefighting, I've gone straight to the 999. So I know what you mean, but not everybody would, yeah? So I think with that, you must begin with the people that work in your own spaces, yes? Because I happen to know that African heritage people that are working within the VOAG sector don't feel supported, don't feel like they have a voice, and feel misunderstood. If they are not supported or they are not understood, how can they go out and firefight? How can they support anybody else if they don't themselves feel that I know what this person is saying, I understand, but when I take it back, this is in place. So I would encourage the community to look at the language that you use. I have to go to a dictionary sometimes to understand the new phrases and the new things you come up with. So look to the people that you are supposed to be supporting. And remember, not everybody is the VOAG sector. So not everybody is going to understand that language. You see me? I mean, do you understand me?
Yeah, we definitely see
language.
Yeah, we hear you and we understand you. Let's not forget, we British people are the masters of passive aggressiveness, and language is used in very interesting ways. This is something that we're very famous for in this country. So Jen, should we go to you next?
Yeah, you can. I think, I mean, I'm kind of echoing what Fulani is saying almost precisely here in what I said before about not treating women as a homogenous group. And I think it's very easy for white men in power to sort of think of us all as a big lump of human that all dresses and talks and behaves in exactly the same way. And of course, we know that that is not true. And when it comes to therapy, when it comes to offering services for anyone else or for anything else, you have to be able to treat people as individuals that come from different communities and have different experiences and different needs. At the moment, the way that money is being meted out to different organisations it's not fair. It should be in a grant-based, ring-fenced way, rather than making smaller and specialist services compete for funding with these big sort of more homogenised, very white services for very straight women. And I just think it's important to recognise that and to treat people differently. You know, like Fulani was saying, you can't actually have successful therapy if you can't communicate properly with your therapist, for example. And I mean, in my situation, class is a real issue. So if I was to, for example, have someone that was very upper middle class or very upper class, I don't think they're going to understand half of where I'm coming from, or my friendship circles, or my family, or anything else. So I can speak on that sort of level. But obviously for a Black woman, or for a Muslim woman, for a woman from anywhere else, you need someone who understands your community your language, the way that stigmas are different. And I think that's something that often gets forgotten. I'd also advise everyone, when you're making these decisions and when we are working together, to look around your table and ask yourself who isn't there, and ask yourself another question when you've worked that out: why they're not there. Have they been invited? If they've been invited, do they feel comfortable? Have you made them comfortable? Are you in a space that's actually accessible so they can get in and out? And adjust that accordingly, because we are so much stronger with all of our voices and all of our opinions and experiences together than we are just leading it from one strand. And I think if we can all remember that, for whatever activism we're doing, would be a lot better for it, a lot stronger, a lot more resilient, and a lot more able to tackle these idiots we currently have in power, to be frank. Thank you.
Thanks, Jen. Okay, Mona, we're going to come to you now, if that's okay.
Sorry, before, can I just say that my name is back to front. My name's Ngozi Fulani, just so that you know, it's not Fulani. Yeah, I don't know what happened, but sorry to cut you, Mona.
Don't worry, don't go for that.
No worries. All right, sorry everyone, I had to run downstairs and get a package. Like I said, it's just like being at home. That's what happens. So look, I want to wrap up by kind of taking something that I said earlier and developing it a bit, and kind of giving you something as my departing kind of kiss, if you like. I had a dream last night that I had died. And I mean that in a positive way, because what happened to me 9 years ago was a death of sorts, because it was the old Mona died so that this new Mona could become. And I honor that old Mona, because that old Mona is that powerful Mona that was able to take me to that protest where I was assaulted, and she allowed me to emerge, and here I am. And I am now 53 years old. And as Sistah said, I have no fucking shame. So I am the one who sits there and says, fuck you, to anyone told fuck you. And I don't give a fuck who that is, whether it's the fascist fuck who's about to leave the White House, Donald Trump, or your fascist fuck in the UK, Boris Johnson, or the fascist fuck of my country of birth, Abdel Fattah el-Sisi. That applies across the board. That also is the same spirit with which I launched #MosqueMeToo, to honor Tarana Burke, Black American feminist who launched Me Too in 2006, but as a way of saying that Me Too belongs to all of us, not just these famous white actresses and Harvey Weinsteins and all that Muslim women have a voice too, the disabled women, working class women, all the women you don't usually see. So I launched #MosqueMeToo because when I was 15 years old on pilgrimage in Mecca in Saudi Arabia, I was sexually assaulted as a pilgrim. And I launched that as a way of showing solidarity with my Muslim sisters. Now, the same week that I launched #MosqueMeToo, I was in a club in Montreal dancing, and a piece of shit sexually assaulted me. And you know what I did? I was 50 years old at the time. I beat the fuck out of him. So I'm also Auntie Mona, who is here, who says that, and a lot of people don't want to hear this, it is my right to answer violence with violence. Because we've heard the criminal justice system does not give us justice. It's fucked up in a myriad of ways. So I am also the one who launched #IBeatMyAssaulter. And I am the one who sits there and says, if you touch me without my consent, I will break your fucking hand. And when they go low, I do not go high. When they go low, I fucking go for them, because we need that. We need that in the time of pandemic, when no one gives a fuck about us. Some of us, not all of us, because I know what it's like to be assaulted and not be able to fight back. So I'm not putting the pressure on you. This is not victim blaming. This is not victim shaming, none of that. But for those of us who have the power to fight, we must fight. So I am here to tell you that I will fight for you. I will sit there and tell the fascist fucks, I will look them in the eye and I will say, I will fucking destroy you, because I will. So I began by telling you that there's softness and there's rage. I began by telling you that I died and I survived. I began by telling you we've got to emerge and all of this, yes. But I'm also the furious one who is going to end what I'm saying now in the way that I began. And that is to look patriarchy in the eye. White supremacist, capitalist, imperialist, ableist, homophobic, transphobic, anti-Semitic, Islamophobic, all the ists in the world, patriarchy. And I am vowing to that patriarchy that I will fucking destroy you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mona, and all your comments so far, and what your parting words have had a huge response. But Mona, everything is lighting up. Let's just put it that way. And just to say, you know, you're brave. Everybody here is brave, and when people call me brave, sometimes, to be fair, it annoys me, because I'm like, yeah, I have to be brave because you don't want to do anything. That's why, right? However, I do want to salute your bravery. I want to salute each of your bravery. But Mona, you are someone who, as I said, you know, I think the compassion and the love and the fight just runs through your veins, and you've always been one of the first to step up and show me huge amounts of solidarity when I've been coming under attack for the work that I've been doing. So thank you. Huda, we're going to come to you next.
I can't really follow that. Apart from saying, yeah, fuck the patriarchy. I guess righteous anger is beautiful, and it gets the job done. So let's use it where we can. And also let's hold the line, and let's kind of not be overwhelmed by the task ahead of us, because with awesome women like all of the panel members in the world, the job will be done. So find your tribe, and buy Mona's books, and support Ngozi, and vote for Jenn, and donate to Fiona, and listen to Sistah, and carry on being inspired, and get the sustenance you need so that you are ready and sustained for the long war that we are engaged in. But the signs, there is joy to be had, and we just need to find it. The fact that we exist, despite all the things that they have thrown at us, we're not supposed to survive this. But we are here, and we've made it, and we are continuing to capitalize on the gains and the wins that every single woman who speaks from a place of pain and suffering has contributed to this kind of global movement in which we can make difference at however small in our own personal lives, to our families, to our communities, to our local authorities, at a national level. You know, we all have amazing talents and possibilities, and kind of deploying that as the A team that we are would be one way to go. So just know your power, step into it, and let's support each other in any ways that we can. And thank you again for this wonderful space. It's been a wonderful start to the 16 days of activism.
Thank you, Huda, and also big up, Huda, for everything you do. There's plenty of people here in this space who know exactly what you do day in, day out. And yes, thank you, Huda, for everything you do. Fiona, I'm going to hand over to you.
Well, Huda, how do I top that? How do I top what anyone said? What I particularly enjoyed, Mona, is anyone who knows me, I am a very sweary person. So I'm very pleased that someone is also equally as passionate to be so sweary as well. I think one of the things I just wanted to say to kind of bring together some of the firefighting conversations is that, you know, in a year where we are also exhausted, how do we slow down? How do we make time for ourselves? And also to realize that actually we're not emergency services. You know, it was flagged to me recently that, you know, some of the amazing staff who work at Solace were taking 60-second breaks between really traumatic calls. And, you know, that's something that we need to work on and not feel guilty about not being able to address all of that. I don't want to take up too much time, but I just wanted to sort of remind everyone that we need to also try to take a step back as much as we can. Particularly, you know, we've got 16 days of activism, which is brilliant, and then everyone, hopefully we can all take a little bit of a break afterwards. But I just wanted to finish to mention our campaign that we're launching tomorrow, which is Make It Stop, which is about ending re-traumatizing that women face when they've been through abuse. So it'll be #MakeItStop. I think I'm right. I'm turning to Sistah for the detail, but we've got a very powerful film. It's a very tough watch, but you know, it really highlights the long-lasting impact, and I think, Jen, you put it very well in what you said, the long-lasting impact on women of the trauma that they experience through violence against women and girls. So I'm going to hand over to Sistah.
Thank you, Fiona. So it's been an absolute honour to spend time with everyone on this panel, and those of you in the room, even though we can't see you, we know you're here, we feel your spirit. So thank you for being here. As the panelists have all said, there's a lot of work to do, but we also need to celebrate our wins. We need to celebrate ourselves. We need to understand that we stand on the shoulders of giants. And there are plenty of people who came before us. There will be many more who come after us, and our work is part of this legacy. But we must do the work, and we must continue to do the work, and we must do it with love and compassion for ourselves and for everyone. And unless we are fighting oppression and wanting to see everyone's humanity, we are not doing our work properly. So that's something we need to emphasize as well. And I want to thank Alex and Shakai and Jane and Rebecca and Erin and Fiona for helping make this evening happen. And our work doesn't stop here, but this conversation, I think, has been beautiful and wonderful. So thank you for being here. Thank you to everyone for speaking so honestly and powerfully. And we acknowledge that, as I said at the beginning of this conversation, that some of the things that have been discussed this evening are overwhelming and exhausting. So we have the helpline number that we've shared, and let's keep supporting each other, keep amplifying each other. And we are an army. We're a strong feminist intersectional army, and we are here to stand up for each other and to make change. So thank you very much, everyone. Take good care of yourselves, and yeah, lots of love and respect.